topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to Mindset Marketing Mastery, the show that brings you the top speakers in the marketing and video industry. With your host, Marie Mason.
Okay, I just love that beat. So anyway, I'm going to find out where that came from since somebody put that together for us. So how are you doing?
Hello, Marie. Hello, everybody. Nice to be here with you on this beautiful, what day is this? Thursday. We're already, this is the last week in April.
The last couple of days of April. It's hard to believe. I think this year is going by very fast. I don't know if anyone else can see that.
Everybody I talk to says the same thing, unless you're two, and then.
If you're judging it by watching TV shows and that kind of stuff and, the 2-year-old perspective.
No, well, they're just
going very slow.
Just their concept of time is very different.
Well, that's true.
They don't have one.
Well, my concept of time was watching things like Sesame Street at that age. So I everything was like an hour-long increments. So that to me was.
Oh, that's how you.
That's how I measured it at my 2-year-old self. So I don't know if anyone can relate. But anyway, so they do understand some concept of time. They just don't understand it the way we do, if that makes sense. We have a little more advanced knowledge in that department. Well, at least most of us adults do. But anyway, but we have a really fantastic show. So I want to welcome everybody back to the Marketing Mindset Mastery Radio Show with your host, Marie Mason, and our lovely and talented co-host, Cheryl Bernstein.
Hello.
And I just want to say we are going to have some fun tonight. But before we bring up our guests, I want to remind everyone, don't forget to check out the swag in our Marketing Mindset Radio Shop. All proceeds are going to help keep the show running on the air. So Cheryl, would you do the honors of talking about that?
I would love to. As Marie mentioned, we have swag. We have merch. We have stuff that you're going to love. We have mugs, t-shirts, tanks, hats, backpacks, even pet beds, beautiful pet beds, water bottles, so much more. And you can go to the website and check it out yourself. It is at libertyvirtualsolutions.com/shop. libertyvirtualsolutions.com/shop. And I think you're going to love all the things there. And you just click and order. The pricing is beautiful and it'll be delivered to your doorstep like magic. And this is only in the United States. Sorry.
It's only the United States, Canada, I think.
In Canada.
And it might be in the UK, but I'm not sure. But right now it's mostly the United States and Canada. So yeah, we'll be branching off soon. We're just testing the US market and Canada market first. So,
but great stuff. So you may want to check that out.
Yeah, we can't wait. So I just want to also remind everyone, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit that notification button so you don't miss out on our shows that meet every Thursday night at 6 p.m. Eastern on W4CY.com radio and our TV show.
It's a little bell they hit, right? It's a little bell.
Ding, ding, ding. I think almost literally. But anyway, I'm just teasing slightly. So anyway, but make sure you all stick around to the end of the show because we have a special announcement that Cheryl and I are going to talk about at the end of the show. So anyway, but I would love it if Cheryl would actually introduce my good friend Marisa, excuse me. I think she could correct me if I'm wrong, but if you would like to do the honors of introducing our guest.
I would love to. Our guest today is Marisa Ferrera. She is a #1 best-selling author and an empowerment coach and mentor. And she's from Canada, but right now living in Colombia, South America. Marisa is passionate about supporting individuals and creating healthy boundaries and relationships with their families and with themselves, sometimes the most important place. Today, she'll be talking about how you can use conflict as an opportunity to heal and create deeper and more meaningful relationships. Interesting. So join us now for our broadcast on W4CY Radio, where we're here every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And I welcome you to our show, Marisa. So nice to have you.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
Me too. Marisa and I have been connected through actually a marketing coach, and that we've known each other for almost 2 years, I think. So it's nice to be able to finally have her on my show. So I'm so excited. So anyway, we have some great questions for you. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Awesome. Okay. Well, the first question is, what is? I'm going to start off with the main one. What made you choose your career path?
Well, that is a great question. And the truth is, what I'm doing today was not my original career path. I actually started out over 40 years ago. It's hard to believe when I was doing the math earlier today. I was actually a little startled by it, but it is over 40 years ago when I actually started out as a preschool teacher. And then I later furthered my education and became an elementary school teacher. And the reason I chose that path was because I knew as a young child that I really wanted to work with children. I always had a real love for children. And one of the reasons as I got older was also because I grew up, like many people, in a very abusive environment. It was very traumatic, both emotionally and physically abusive. And I really wanted to work with kids because I knew that the school day was, a good part of their life. And I wanted to create an environment for them where if they had unpleasant home situations like I did, at least during their time in school, I could just shower them with lots of love and positive attention and encouragement and really let them know how wonderful they were, even if they were getting different messages when they were at home. And I really did believe that was going to be my career for life. I was really grateful to have that job. I would brag about how I got paid to do that job. And so you might wonder, why did I ever leave? And what happened to me after about 10 years in this teaching in the school system, the publicly funded school system, I became really disillusioned. And I started to recognize more and more how what I really believed that children needed and deserved was not something I could give them within the confines and the structure of the educational system and what I was mandated to do. And so I left without really knowing what was next. And eventually I ended up starting my own holistic private school, which I ran for 6 years. And it was a school that I was able to do what I wanted. I didn't have to go by the Ontario ministry guidelines. I could give the kids what I thought they deserved and really created customized programs and really had a lot of fun there. But then I wasn't able to sustain it because it was a private school. I didn't have funding other than tuition fees. And so over time, I just had to let it go. I just couldn't financially sustain it. So I was kind of left with, okay, what's next? And what I recognized when I reflected back on everything I did and what felt good to me, a lot of what I did had to do, even with the children, on learning how to communicate from the heart, how to deal with conflict, even, between themselves. And I started finding that more and more people were coming to me asking for relationship advice. And so it just became a natural thing. I realized I had a natural gift and talent for coaching and for just supporting people in creating healthier and happier relationships. And that's what I do now. I focus primarily on helping people with their family relationships because I feel that all our relationships, including our relationship with ourselves, really stem from our relationship with our family members. And if we don't heal stuff from the past, then it just kind of gets carried forward. And I know that from my own personal experience as well, having transformed my relationship with my father, who was my main abuser, it just totally transformed my life and all my other relationships. So I just want to share that with other people that want the same thing.
No, that's brilliant. Now, and you and I have a similar background in teaching because I taught for preschool for 20 years, including
Wow.
15 in schools and 5 years at a home daycare. So your background and mine are very, very similar. But how appropriate that you tied your very topic into the next question. So, anyway, many people avoid conflict and don't see anything positive about it. And then what I'd like to ask is, you say that we can use conflict as opportunities to heal and create deeper connections, like you showed in your story. So, can you tell us more about what you mean by that?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's so true. And I was one of those people in the past as well that would avoid conflict like the plague, afraid of rocking the boat, just don't speak up because, being fearful of making situations worse and creating more conflict and more drama. So I can really relate to that fear. And yet what I've learned over the years is that when we experience conflict, we get triggered, right? And what's happened is a wound from the past has been activated. And then it comes to the surface. And so what happens is we go into what I call, and I'm not sure if I learned this from somebody somewhere, but if I did, I don't remember who it is, but we go into a child state. And that's why you'll find, when people get into arguments or upsets with each other, sometimes one person will say to the other, stop acting like a child. You're acting like a child. I mean, you've probably said that before. I know I've said it in the past. And I've had people say it to me, right? And the truth is when we get triggered, we do go back into that child state. And it doesn't matter how intelligent you are, how many degrees you have behind your name, that just gets thrown out the window. We go back to that child state and that wounded space. And so that's why if you look at conflict as an opportunity to heal that, you're able to look at the person in a different way. You can feel more connected because you heal from the past, and then you're able to get triggered less often. So it's the past that comes back to the present moment that gives us an opportunity to take the steps to heal from it. And once you do, you'll find that your triggers are less intense, less frequent, and you're able to work more peacefully together in creating win-win solutions when you've got challenges with somebody.
That's fantastic. Cheryl, you have any other questions for her?
Well, I just find it so interesting. And I understand what you're saying about use that conflict. How would somebody go about doing that? Let's say you're in a conflict. Like, I just can't imagine me stopping and like trying to learn from it, because I have been in my child state. I've thrown tantrums.
Sure.
Child just tantrums sometimes. So how do you go about using it?
Well, one of the ways is to actually just take some time to reflect back on situations in the past when you were triggered and when you got upset with somebody, rather than wait till you're in the moment of it. Because what happens is if you wait till you're in the moment, like I said, if you haven't done the healing work, you're just going to go back to your old patterns of, reacting and projecting and all that kind of stuff. So if you take some time to actually explore, what's going on when you do get upset, look a little bit deeper and see, what's underneath the surface, what's it really bringing up for you, and look at the meaning that you attached to those past situations when you were upset. Because I believe that, things happen, of course, there's facts about what happens, and then there's the meaning that we attach to that event, right? Or to that circumstance, or to what somebody might say to us. Or sometimes it's about what they don't say that we want them to say, or what they don't do that we want them to do, right? And so if you look a little bit beneath the surface and try to identify what core wound is actually coming to the surface, then you've got something to work with. And I have found, through my own exploration of self and also the people I've worked with and talked with, that there's some pretty common core wounds that many of us will recognize. You've probably heard the one, I'm not good enough, right? I mean, how many of us walk around with that label, right? I'm not good enough.
And the mental ping pong that goes along with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Other ones are, I'm not smart enough. I'm stupid. That was one of mine. I can't do anything right. I'm not lovable. I'm not worthy. So these are all different core wounds that we picked up in our childhood because of some experiences that we've had, but they've been carried with us into our adult life. And so when they get activated, we start to feel that way again. And so all those limiting beliefs that we've adopted, they impact us even in unconscious ways. Like sometimes people don't even realize that these wounds are impacting their relationships today. Like, I mean, how many times have you, maybe this has happened to some of the listeners or to either of you, where you find yourself in the same relationship over and over again with a different face. And you wonder, like, I don't understand, like, why do I keep attracting, the same person and then it doesn't work? And a good reason for that is because there's patterns from the past that just are going to keep presenting themselves to us as an opportunity to heal, to learn, to grow, and to evolve. And unless we, take the steps to do that work, we are going to keep re-experiencing the same things over and over again, whether it's with a significant other or a family member or friends even. It can happen.
Marisa, would it look like this? Let's say you do keep attracting the same something that keeps bringing up a certain something in you.
Mhm.
Is that because you're trying through each relationship to have that other person do or be or give what you think you didn't get? But
Yeah.
they can't be the one to give it. Of course, we have to be the one to change. Is that how that
Yeah,
works?
that's a great way of expressing it. It's true because we keep wanting somebody else to fill something that we feel is missing within ourselves. And even when it comes to romantic relationships, we often hear, about, oh, my other half, my better half, and we talk about it as if you're only half a person and you need another person to make you feel whole and complete. And that's not the case at all, because as long as you're in that space, whether again it's with a significant other or you need something from other people, other family members to show up a certain way, as long as you have that need, then you're kind of a victim to their way of being. Like there's no power there because you have no control over how other people show up in your life. All we have control over, I know, we all want it, right? And this is coming from a control freak in recovery here, okay? Because
Me too. I'm guilty.
yeah. And being a control freak, I totally, again, identify with that. And part of the reasons many of us have this need to control is because we had no control as children. So we think by trying to be in control, we feel safer. We think we create this safe container for ourselves, but really it creates problems and it pushes people away from us. And so once we recognize that it's not about the other person, it's the work we need to do within ourselves, and then you're going to attract a different person who doesn't complete you, but who complements you. There's a difference between the two.
Because you're not trying to fill a hole. You're
No.
trying to, you are a whole.
Exactly.
You're not but a WHO, you're whole.
Yes.
You don't have a hole.
That's
We're
right.
poking holes in you today. We're trying to fix the holes that are
Exactly.
inside you. Anyway,
Exactly.
just a little clever words.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Now, and it's so true. You really need to look inside of yourself and be happy with, fix you on the inside, and everybody in your life has a different role that they're going to play,
Mhm.
but you need to be um, comfortable in your own skin and not
Mhm.
just like, yes, they can fill different roles, but one person can't fill all the roles. There's going to be different people playing different roles in their lives. So,
Mhm.
anyway, that's just something. Now, did we talk about tips on how we can heal from our past yet?
I talked a little bit about that, but there's a really simple process, if I can elaborate a little bit more on
Sure.
that, because identifying the core wound is the first step, right? Again, trying to look at what is it that I'm making this whole situation mean, that this person thinks I'm stupid or whatever's going on, they think I'm not smart or they think I'm whatever they think. And so the first step is to really take a look at, again, this takes
Marisa,
time.
can I just
Sure.
clarify?
Sure.
We're thinking that they're thinking that.
Yes, exactly.
We're thinking.
Exactly. That's why I said it's what we make it mean, right?
Yeah.
And our interpretations can be way off, and we can talk a little bit about that more if you want to. And actually, this is part of the healing, is when we look at what we've made the current situation mean, the current upset or recent one, if you're taking some time to journal and reflect, which I highly recommend, is take a look at what happened, and then think about when you experienced that as a child. What's your first memory of when you felt the same, when you felt like somebody thought you were stupid, or you felt stupid, or you felt unlovable, or you felt unattractive, or whatever it was? Like, when did you feel that? See if you can dig deeper and look at the whole situation, identify what happened, who was involved, who was the person that, did something or said something that had you feeling the way that you felt it, that, when you were a child, and what limiting belief did you buy into or adopt at that time? So that's the first step, because once you can go back and find the root, then you can look at changing the story around it. And let me give you an example. For me, for example, when I look back at, feeling not good enough and nothing, I mean, I'm also, I'm going to label myself with a lot of things that I've overcome, but I'm also an overcoming perfectionist. And I came to being a perfectionist because I had a very strict father. Nothing was ever good enough. If I did clean the house, he would, have the white glove and find the spot where I missed the dust. And I mean, it was not a good thing if he found that, right? That's where the abuse would come in, because I didn't do it right, or I didn't do it good enough. And so, when I went back and looked at that, I made it all mean that I wasn't good enough. And I also made it mean that my dad, he was a bully, and he was really mean, and he wasn't very nice, and all these things I made up about him, right? But then the second step is when you can reframe the story and look at it from a different perspective. Because from a child's perspective, yeah, I was this little kid, being hurt a lot. And here's my dad, 6 foot something, construction worker, huge man. He was a big monster bully to me, right? But now as an adult, I can look back and I can look a little bit deeper into his life. And then I uncover and discover that he was abused as a child. But he didn't have the tools that I have, or had and still have, to be able to heal from his past. And so what did he do? He just projected his unhealed wounds onto me and my sisters and my mom. He didn't know any better. And that's not to say what he did was okay. But when I was able to reframe it and see him as a child, acting from his child state, his wounded child state, it allowed me to see it in a completely different way. And it brought up compassion in me. And that's what takes us to the third step, which is forgiveness. And that's one that a lot of people have trouble with, because there's so much wrapped around forgiveness. People think, there's no way I can forgive them for what they did. They were horrible and this and that. But what people don't recognize is that when we don't forgive, we keep carrying that resentment, that anger, that pain. It's inside of us, and we carry it every moment of every day, whether we're consciously aware of it or not. And as I mentioned before, it's impacting us on so many levels. And so when you are able to forgive somebody, it releases you from all of that. You're completely free from it. It's like when you can no longer be impacted by your past, it's unbelievable how many doors start to open up and what you can create that's very different. And the big thing is for people to understand that forgiving does not mean condoning behavior. It does not mean it was okay. It just means you understand it now from a different perspective and you're ready to let it go.
No, it makes sense. And like you said, the hardest part is letting go, and also forgiving yourself. Because sometimes you've got to forgive yourself first before you
Yes.
can forgive the other person. And there's like 2 or 3 steps in there that most people don't realize that process. So very
Sure,
good
for
point.
sure. Yeah.
Very good
And
point. So
forgiveness is a big topic for sure. But one worth exploring, even if you're not sure how, even if you're just open to it, right? Because if you're not open to it, then you're basically going to be stuck. I hate to say it, but that's kind of the truth. I mean, people that continue to walk around with anger and resentment from the past, they're not happy people. And it starts to impact you on a physical level too, right? How many people get sick because of they're carrying around all of this upset inside of them, and it starts to show up in their physical body as well, right?
and it shows up in all areas of your life, like you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
It shows up in every part. So
Marisa,
Yes.
when it comes to forgiveness, and I know it's a big topic, you could probably do a whole program on forgiveness.
Yeah.
I mean, like a 12-week program.
Mm-hmm.
You don't necessarily have to go to the person and forgive them, do you? It's more an internal thing. Is it more in yourself? You forgive the other person. Is that's
a great question. It's a great question because it brings up, the question that comes up for people, that haven't forgiven someone who's passed away, right? If you need the other person, then again, you're kind of stuck and disempowered for the rest of your life, because if you think it's too late now that they're gone, you're done, right? But no, it is an inside job, and you don't have to necessarily even speak to the other person about it. In the case of my father, for example, he would not even understand because he was also an immigrant, right, from Italy. English is his second language. He didn't have an education, even I think he had a grade 5 education. If I tried to explain anything to him, he wouldn't understand it, number one, and he would think I was blaming him for stuff, right? And it would just backfire, would not have the effect or the impact that I would want. So I did it within myself, but it allowed me to show up differently when I was with him, and in a much more empowered place, because I was the one in the, you were talking earlier, Marie, about the roles that we play, right? And I played a role in childhood as the peacekeeper and the invisible one, right? Because it was safer to be invisible. I had no self-confidence, no self-esteem. If someone told me I'd be on a live radio show, I would be like, no way, right? That would never happen. But that goes to show, when you work on yourself, anything is possible, right? But yeah, no, with my father, I showed up differently, and there was an act. I don't know if we have time or if you're going to commercial soon, but there's
have to go to commercial soon.
We do?
Yeah. So
okay.
yeah, you can
Well, I'll save a story for you that really showed me that I had really stepped into my power when it came to my father. It's a pretty powerful story.
Yeah, I definitely want you to share that story. So I want to thank Marisa for sharing valuable tips to our audience to help them transform conflict into connection so that they could grow themselves and their business here on the Marketing Mindset Mastery Radio Show. Marisa has agreed to stick around for the second half of the show so she can talk a little more about her story and the more details about how to handle the conflict and turn them into connections. That ends the segment of our show, and you are listening to the Marketing Mindset Radio Show with your host, Marie Mason, and co-host Cheryl Bernstein. We'll be right back, and we're going to commercial break now.
We're taking a short break, and we'll be right back. You're listening to Marketing Mindset Mastery, the show that brings you the top speakers in the marketing and video industry, with your host, Marie Mason. The show is brought to you by Liberty Virtual Solutions. We work with business coaches and speakers to help them market and host their webinars and upsell their coaching programs and develop heart-centered relationships with their audience. Welcome back to the Marketing Mindset Mastery Show with your host, Marie Mason, a premier podcast that helps you master your marketing skills.
I'm so ready to go dancing at some point. Maybe I'll just have a dance session at home. I don't know. This music gets me pumping every week. But anyway, welcome back to the Marketing Mindset Mastery Radio Show with your host, Marie Mason, and our guest, Marisa Ferrera, and my co-host, and lovely talented co-host, Cheryl Bernstein.
Hello.
So Marisa is a #1 best-selling author and empowerment coach and mentor from Canada. She is now living in Colombia, South Carolina. Ooh, great place
Not
to
South
live right
Carolina.
now.
Not South Carolina.
Oh, America, South America. I'm so glad Cheryl's still here to correct me. Anyway,
No.
that's a new place for you to live maybe next time. Maybe I'm speaking that you live closer. That's what it is. Anyway, Marisa is passionate about supporting individuals and creating healthy boundaries in relationships with their families and with themselves. So today she will be talking to you about how you can use conflict as an opportunity to heal and create deeper and more meaningful relationships. So take it away, Marisa. So welcome back to the second half. You had a story you wanted to share.
Yes, I was talking about, forgiveness and also stepping into your power. And I was talking about how as a child, I was, the peacekeeper and the quiet one. And I never confronted my father because I saw what happened to my older sister when she did. And I didn't want any of that, right? So, so it was, took a while for me to really find my voice and to feel safe and confident to actually speak my truth, especially with my father. And the story that I want to share, believe it or not, it was when I was 40 years old. And that's, I'd already been working on myself for 20 years, but I really knew I had stepped into my power when this particular situation happened. And what happened was I had a relationship at that time with a significant other, and we had both been married before, and we wanted to have a ceremony to honor our relationship and our commitment to one another, but we didn't want it to be a wedding, like a legal wedding marriage, because we didn't feel at the time that meant anything to us. But we also didn't want to just keep hanging out like boyfriend, girlfriend. Our relationship was more significant than that. So we decided to create our own ceremony, and we called it a declaration of love and commitment ceremony. So it was similar to a wedding. It was going to be small with our close family and friends, and we were going to say our own vows and have readings and stuff, but there was no legal part of it, right? And so when I went back home, because I wasn't living in the same town as my parents at that time, when we went to my parents' home to tell them about this, my father was not a happy camper. And he did not mince words in expressing his dissatisfaction and the fact that he didn't like this idea at all, that we weren't going to get married. And so he was just going up one side of me and down the other, and like was really verbally abusive. But I noticed at that time, the whole time he was doing that, it was not impacting me. And it wasn't because I put up a wall and I was pretending or saying to myself, you know, I'm not going to let it hurt me or whatever. It actually didn't. And not only that, because of the healing work I had done, I actually psychically or remote or non-verbally, I was sending messages to him in my mind that was saying, it's okay, Dad. I love you, Dad. I know you're just afraid for me. You just care about me. And I'm just sending him all this positive stuff, right, as he's lashing out at me. And then at one point, he actually said, I don't want to hurt you, but, and I just looked him straight in the eye and I said, it's okay, Dad. You can't hurt me anymore. And I felt so empowered in that moment because it was the truth. And later, my partner told me, who's very thin, like half the size of my father, had never seen my father like that ever in the whole time we had been together, because my father was normally on his best behavior in front of other people, right? He'd never seen him that verbal and abusive and all of that, even though I told him about my childhood and he knew all about it, but he'd never witnessed anything. And he told me that he was on the edge of his seat thinking he was going to have to step in and physically protect me. And I thought, like, he was afraid for me. And I thought, wow, I said, you know, I did not feel any fear. And I said, and the way my dad was in that moment was not even, you know, this close to what he was like when I was a child. And I was like, you know, very small. He was much more intimidating. And so I realized in that moment how much I had grown and healed. And that changed the dynamic of our relationship. Actually, from that moment forward, there were other things that happened that I won't get into because we'll need another show. But let's just say that because of that healing experience, I was able to turn my I hate to use the word hatred, but I did feel that for my father growing up because he scared me so much and I was fearful for my life so many times and my family. But I was able to transform that into feeling such a deep connection with him and a deep love that when I found out that he was diagnosed with a terminal cancer, I was living in Colombia at the time. We were renting a place, and within a week, we had packed everything up, put it in storage, and we were back in Canada. And I was one of his primary caregivers for the last 2 months of his life. Wow. And I did that from my heart, from my love, not from obligation. Like, you know, that's what Italian daughters do. That's what you're supposed to do because it's going to look bad and everyone's going to think whatever if you don't. That would have been the case. I would have still done the same thing if I hadn't done the healing work and shifted, you know, transformed that relationship. I would have done the same thing, but the whole time I'd be in Canada, I'd be thinking, here I am stuck in Canada. I could be in Colombia where it's beautiful and warm, and I would have resentment and all that. Instead, I was there with such love and such gratitude for having that clearing space with him that I could share those 2 months with him in such a beautiful way.
That's amazing. No, and that's good that you did that. And that's a good example of forgiving and also using a lot of positive affirmations to plant those positive seeds with your father that eventually did sprout because you kept saying it in your mind and eventually kind of he must have picked up on that because, you know, people will pick up on vibes. I don't know if y'all know that, but people pick up on vibes. So he must have picked up on that and it really made a big, big difference. So I'm glad. So that's a good story. Cheryl,
and you're right. I just want to interject there, Marie, because you're absolutely right about how people pick up our energy. They're not aware of it consciously. But there's a quote by somebody that says something like, wow, how the world has changed or people have changed, you know, but you're the one that's changed. And so everything looks different when you change.
Yeah. Cheryl, do you have a question?
Yeah. Marisa, what do you think is
perhaps, I don't know if it's the most important thing, but a very important thing for our listeners to understand if they would like to have and create better relationships in their life?
Well, it's important for them to know that conflict isn't going to go away forever, right? It's kind of part of life because everyone has their own unique personalities and individual opinions and all of that. And so it's important to recognize that, conflict isn't going to go away. And so the important thing is to take responsibility for our own thoughts, our own feelings, our own experiences, and let go of the blame game. And that includes not blaming yourself, because people think somebody has to be blamed. So if we're not blaming the other person, sometimes people turn it around and say they take the blame. Exactly. And I like to just say nobody's to blame. We're all doing the best that we can with the tools that we have, the understanding that we have. And so if we recognize that, we have more compassion for ourselves, and for other people.
Mm.
Oh, that's a brilliantly put. So, well, I do have some other questions for you. Are there other ways where we can decrease drama? And if we haven't touched on this already, are there other ways in which we can decrease conflict and drama in our lives? I mean, I know there's more than one way, but is there a
Sure.
way that you prefer to share with us?
Well, there is something I'd like to share, because a lot of people don't realize there are certain things that people do when there's a conflict happening that just creates, I call it adding fuel to fire, right? The fire's already burning and we just throw more fuel on it, right? So I like to share, what I call 5 communication landmines to avoid, because if you do these things, that things are probably going to go from bad to worse. It's not going to create a deeper connection or deeper, relationships. It's going to create more separation. And one of them is using the words always or never. How many times have you or you've said them yourself or heard them say, you're always late, or you're never on time, or you're always leaving your clothes laying around, or never this and never that, or always this. And that's something we do because we try to defend our position and try to be right. And yet all that does is add fuel to fire, because the person is going to get defensive when you say that. And they're going to start mentioning all the times when that wasn't the truth. And you're just taking the focus off of what's happening like right now. And you've opened up this whole other bag of stuff to deal with. So you just now created a mountain out of a molehill, right? So do your best to stay away. I don't want to say never use the word never, because we're not supposed to use those words.
It's a double negative too.
It is a double negative. So
that's beside the point.
Exactly. So I do my best to avoid the words always and never. And if you catch yourself using it, then just do your best to shift it and change it into something else, because that's just going to create defensiveness in the other person. That's one landmine to avoid. The other one is to avoid any put downs or name calling. Sometimes people call that even, hitting below the belt, like when you're telling someone they're useless, they're selfish, they're an idiot, whatever. That again is not going to help you resolve a conflict. It's just going to create a bigger problem, more conflict, more drama, and more separation. It is not going to bring you closer together. So do your best to just stop the labeling of calling names. And the other one is yelling. I mean, isn't that something a lot of people go to? And I used to be a yeller in my previous marriage. And it's interesting because I went from not having a voice, that end of the spectrum, to like going way over to the other side and just demanding, to be heard, no matter at what cost. And I didn't understand at the time. It was me trying to learn and play out and come to that middle place where I could be heard without the yelling and without, zipping it up and saying nothing out of fear, right? There is a balance there, but the yelling, again, it just creates more problems and nobody's listening. You just start yelling at each other and you're not resolving anything. So that's another one if you feel like you're going to start yelling, you're better off saying, I need some time to just settle myself down because I don't want to start yelling, and I can feel like that's where I'm going to go next. Like, take responsibility, own where you are, and take a responsible action, like walking away, and not walk away forever. Come back and discuss it. Otherwise, the problem doesn't go away by avoiding it, right? And then one I've talked about already, the blame game, letting go of the blame game. Make sure, leave blame out of it, because then it's about, who's right and who's wrong and who's at fault and who isn't. And again, doesn't resolve anything. And the other one is about bringing up the past. We do that when something happens now that upsets you. We start bringing up all the stuff from the past when the same thing happened. Like, well, this isn't the first time, and maybe you never talked about it before. So sometimes people have used the term you're gunny sacking, like you're just throwing it all on the table, right? And so again, you've got so much to deal with because you're trying to defend your position again, make yourself right, that, I'm right. Look at all these other times that you screwed up, basically, right? And that's not going to resolve anything. So stick to focusing on one situation at a time. So again, stay away from the words always and never, no put downs and name calling, no yelling, no blame game, and stop bringing up the past.
That's something I've been trying to say to certain individuals I will remain nameless for years, so I get that. That's a topic for a private conversation. But anyway, because I don't want to bring that kind of drama onto the show. But I think we got at least one more question for you. And then, what is the most important thing you want our listeners need to understand?
We did do
We
that
did
one.
that. We did
We
do that
did
one.
that.
Okay,
So I did talk about that a little bit, but I could expand on it if you want.
we
Yeah.
could, or did we
Or-
even touch? Did we ask you? Does this mean that we need to be healed from our past wounds, or won't experience conflicts anymore? Did we go into that at all?
No, you didn't ask me that question, and it's a great question because some people think, well, yeah,
That'd be a good follow-up question.
Sure. Like I said, I've been working on my stuff for I'm trying to probably 40 years. I'm thinking, how old am I? And I started in my 20s. So yeah. And I can't say that I never get triggered, even though I've been working and healing and I teach this stuff, right? It's not like I don't get triggered anymore, but there's a real difference when I do now. In the past, when I got triggered, I was completely unconscious about everything. I just did all those things I said not, to stay away from, right? I would blame, yell, put down, do all those things because I didn't take responsibility. I really, and many people believe it's all about the other person and we have evidence for that because we say, well, if you didn't say what you just said, I wouldn't be upset. Or if you didn't do what you just did, I wouldn't be upset. Or if you would have said this, I wouldn't be upset. Or if you would have done that, I wouldn't be upset. So we think it's all about the other person until we recognize that, no, the other person did or didn't do whatever. An healed wound got activated. Now we're making it about them instead of looking inside, right? So the more you heal, it doesn't mean that you're never going to experience conflict or drama. It's just going to mean you're going to have the tools to communicate from a place of responsibility and empowerment. You're not going to shut down and walk away because you're afraid of rocking the boat. And you're not going to start being a bulldog either or a bulldozer to get your own way. You're going to be able to stay in a centered place, communicate from a loving space, from your heart. You're going to recognize. So for example, when I notice if I get triggered with my husband, I'll feel it. I can feel it now before I even say anything. And I'll just say, wow, I've just been triggered by that. And what's really going on for me is, because now I can find it faster, right? Because it's like anything, the more you practice something, the easier it is to use the tool, right? And he does the same thing. Or sometimes we will, in a loving way, say, you wouldn't happen to be triggered, would you? Or is that a trigger? So we don't feed each other's trigger. We use it as an opportunity to support one another in healing on another level, because healing happens in layers. It's like an onion, right? You start here and then more situations come up and more and more and more and more. And so the more you do the inner work, the less you will get triggered. It's not like you will get triggered, but not nearly as often. And when you are triggered, the intensity is not the same. Like it used to take me when my husband and I first started using these tools, we kind of did it naturally, to be honest. I didn't even know what we were doing until somebody said, well, you guys have such an amazing relationship. Like, what do you do? And we literally sat down and thought, what are we doing? and we recognized all these things that I now teach. But in the beginning, it could take us hours to work through a conflict together. And we made an agreement that we weren't going to go to bed with what I call stuff in our space, right? With something unresolved. And that meant sometimes staying up till 4 a.m. when I had to get up at 6 and go to work. And I was like, but it was tough, but we stick to our commitment. Well, now we can work through stuff in like 10 minutes. That might've taken like 10 hours.
Wow.
So it's a huge difference. It's a huge difference.
Well, thank you so much for that. You have a couple of gifts, a gift and a way to connect with you. So for our audience.
Sure. One of the things that I find with the people I work with and that follow me that they have a really hard time with when it comes to boundaries, and I know we didn't really touch on that a whole lot, but one of the challenges they have is saying no. And so I put together a guide that's on how to say no with courage, confidence, and grace, right? All of those things. And so it has different scenarios in it that you might find yourself in, and with scripts that you can edit to your own way of speaking, right? Because you don't want to sound like me, but it's a place to start and to find some ways to say no before you're in a situation where you want to say no. So you feel, not because you've got a script and you're prepared like a robot that you're going to just kind of fill in the blanks, but where you feel more empowered to be able to say no without fear of how people are going to react to that. So that's one of the gifts. And I have a link on my website that I'll share with you where you can choose whatever gifts you want. But that's one of them. And another one was really how to work through a conflict. It's literally just 10 steps. It's one page. I've had people literally print it out. I kept it in black and white on purpose, so without fancy pictures, so it's easy to print. And I've had clients say they've printed it out and they've got it with them when they're working through a conflict with their spouse or something, like, oh, step one, okay, now we do this, until they learn how to follow them more automatically. But it's just a way to stay on topic and stay away from those landmines that I mentioned as well. And what else have I got? I've got actually a sample of my book. I know we didn't talk about my book, but if people want to download, a chapter, they can do that as well. But they can just go to my website at magnifyyourmagnificence.com/MMM for marketing mindset mastery.
Oh, you are so sweet for doing that for us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being on the show. And before we close out the show, we have some sad news to share with our audience. Cheryl is been a lovely, talented co-host for mine since September, believe it or not. And she would like to say some parting words because her last show is of course, she might come
Yes.
back as a guest if she has time. But you want to say some
This
parting
is
words?
my last show, everybody. I thank you so much for welcoming me into your homes here on Marketing Mindset Mastery. I have enjoyed being here with Marie and all our wonderful guests like Marisa. But to everything, there is a season. And I have some other things happening going forward in my future. And it was just a perfect time at the end of April to say goodbye here at Marketing Mindset Mastery. And you are in very good hands with Marie. And I'm sure I'll be popping back in from time to time to say
I'll twist
hello,
your arm to come
have
back.
some fun. But thank you so much, Marie, for having me, and
It's been a pleasure.
W4CY. It's been great, and I've enjoyed doing it. But time,
To move
as you know,
forward.
moves on.
Yeah.
Time moves on and new opportunities open up. And
Yeah,
I
like
wish everybody, yeah.
like Marissa always says, sometimes there's like she has to go forward and do other things too. Like she changed and pivoted, and you're doing the same. So, and we
Yes.
wish you the best of luck. We will miss you. We will
Thank
be
you.
having a new co-host, and I need to get confirmation first. But Pliny Phoenix from Ireland is coming to start
Ooh,
joining us. We're hoping she can start joining us in the May episodes, but that's to be figured out. Still, I
wonderful.
need to get
That's
confirmation, but
terrific.
yeah, she has agreed to be co-host for 2 or 3 months, and then Mark Hunter has agreed to be a co-host and help wrap up. And how apropos, because he was my first co-host that got me started in podcasting. So that'd be great to wrap him up for the last couple months of
That's great.
of August and
Wonderful.
September. So anyway, and then we'll figure the rest out from there. But Cheryl, I'm gonna have you do the honors and
Oh,
close out the show since you
one
are
moment.
your final debut.
I have to get back to our.
Oh, that's okay. We
All
have to
right,
use
I've got
scripts to
it.
keep on track.
I have
So,
got it. I want to thank our guest today, Marisa Ferrera, for speaking to us about conflict and how you can use that for healing in your life and all the wonderful things that she's explained to us and shared with us. Be sure to go to her website and get her free gift at Let me say it again, magnifyyourmagnificence.com/MMM. And you'll see 3 beautiful things there, 3 beautiful gifts that you can choose one or all. And we thank you so much, Marisa, for being here. And we will have another wonderful guest speaker on next week's show, providing more tips on how to set up your business for success. So join us again for our next episode for great tips, ideas, and how-tos to make your marketing and your mindset work for you. Make sure you join us here every Thursday night at 6 p.m. Eastern, right here on W4CY Radio. I thank you all so much. I wish you all wonderful blessings and success and joy. And until next time, this is Cheryl Bernstein and your host, Marie Mason, saying bye for now from Marketing Mindset Mastery. And that ends this week's show. Bye,
Have a great
everybody.
week, everybody. Bye.
Go to our radio page and check out the gifts from our speakers. We'll see you next time on Marketing Mindset Mastery with your host, Marie Mason.